A new ruling late today finds Donald Trump and his business guilty of fraud. This is a major legal blow, and it is rocking both Donald Trump and his companies. A New York judge ruling late today that Donald Trump defrauded banks and insurers across his business activities, not once or twice, but repeatedly, sometimes routinely, for years. You see the AP headline there. Trump repeatedly is the word of the judge there, quote, repeatedly submitted fraudulent financial documents. This is now, right here tonight, this news, the largest victory yet for the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, and her ongoing clash with Trump. Now, you may recall she had already forced him into contempt proceedings and forced him to testify, where he then pled the fifth. Today's new ruling vindicates, as a legal matter, the thrust, the core of her case, which is that Donald Trump was not just good at business or clever or aggressive or any of the words that are thrown around many businesses, including the rough and tumble version of New York real estate, but rather it confirms and validates her legal argument that the way he got ahead and the way he has made money is by committing fraud, that this is, in essence, at times, a fraudulent company. It's a civil case with major, major repercussions. The ruling now tees up the next steps, the punishment, possible further fines, and an imminent trial that is set for October 2nd. Donald Trump dealing with many trials. Now, let me walk through this briefly with you. Ali Velshi was kind to introduce us as going through it, but we're all making sense of it together. And what I'm going to do is what we try to do around here, go through the evidence and the materials themselves. I'm going to read to you a couple of quotes in a moment, but I'll tell you off top. The first bad news right here for Trump is that this civil trial will be run by the judge alone, no jury, where you might have one holdout, or where lawyers can, and it's totally legal to do this, try to appeal to people's sense of confusion about all the numbers flying around. This will be a judge who is something of an expert, supposed to be fair and impartial, but an expert at the difference between, say, a little exaggeration, hey, this is the best apartment you could get. You're allowed to say that. And hey, this apartment is in, say, Soho, a neighborhood that it's not, where you're literally lying about the maps. That's something they were caught doing. Now, this will build, the case will build off today's new loss, which means the fraud has already been found. The judge will now decide what to do about it. That's one thing. Second piece of bad news here, rocking the Trump companies, is the judge has ordered sanctions today already, including that, quote, business certificates owned by Donald J. Trump are canceled. We've highlighted that word. This is not canceled like Kanye or some actor you don't want to see anymore. This is the traditional legal definition of canceled, that they no longer exist legally, that those business certificates would become legally revoked. That is a big deal, and I'm going to tell you something. Right now, literally, lawyers and experts in New York are scouring the ruling and that language and precedent to try to understand what this means. Now, it could still be appealed, and there are basically questions about how that language, that new ruling, could limit or even lead to dissolving some or many of Trump's companies. So those are two big headlines. Before I bring in Maya Wiley, who is going to make sense of this for us, we hope, I will read to you a little bit of what the judge ruled today. That Trump and his lawyers engaged in obstreperous conduct, bogus arguments during this standoff. That Donald Trump has at times lived in a fantasy world and not the real world. That may be allowed on the internet. The internet's full of fantasy. It's not allowed if you turn those fantasies into what you see here, fraud. And the judge, responding to Letitia James, has singled out fraud in the businesses and his actions and said that that is basically what they're up to. They also found that Donald Trump was involved in fraudulently inflating the value of specific properties, like the Seven Springs property, and they concluded that he continues to disseminate false and misleading information. Now, that's the last quote I'm going to read before I bring in our guest. The reason I mention that one, false and misleading, is you might say, okay, Ari, I've heard of that before. He's been doing that for a long time. And as we've discussed before, you are allowed in America to say misleading things. I don't know if you have any family members who ever do that in public, in private, on Facebook. That's over here. What's over here tonight, and the reason why lawyers are trying to figure out what this means for his companies, what it means to lose the business certificates, what's going to happen at this looming trial, is you are not allowed in America, you are not allowed in New York to blatantly, deliberately submit false information to the government or to banks in order to defraud other people who are honestly participating in legal life or business. That's the bottom line. There's a lot more to it. We tried to keep it pretty straightforward. I want to bring in a former SDNY civil prosecutor analyzing this civil case, Maya Wiley. I mentioned, Maya, that there's other stuff, and that's not me and Ali Velshi being, falsely humble. Some of this gets really technical, and that's why Letitia James has kind of brought an army of investigators to it. But let's start at that high level. When this judge says, at the summary judgment level, you committed fraud, that debate is over. What does that tell us?
Well, it tells us that the evidence that Letitia James and her team collected was so strong that a judge said, there's nothing for a jury to decide here. The evidence is clear, and Donald Trump and his team did not meet their burden of saying, wait, no, there really is a question here for a jury to determine. And that's a really strong statement by any judge. Many judges in civil cases do like to defer to juries to make those kinds of decisions. So when they do, and when a judge in a case like this with a very high profile, obviously, organization, in the case of the Trump Organization and Donald Trump at its head, decides that there's enough evidence without going to a jury, except on damages, that's what it's going for, to decide how much they have to pay. That's a big statement. And one of the things that really struck me that's early on in the opinion is the judge said, not only are they accused of fraud, of basically inflating values for self-enrichment, that they're even misrepresenting the law in the very way in which they're trying to interpret whether or not it applies to them.
Yeah, and we've now kept track of multiple investigators and prosecutors dealing with Trump, including the DA in Atlanta, including Jack Smith. But James was earlier, and so people may have lost track. She had talked a lot about when she came into office that if these things went unenforced for whatever reason, including the type of temporary sort of federal immunity the president has and a kind of a reluctance to get into too much of this stuff while he was in office, she said, look, no one's going to be above the law. I want to play a little bit of James. This was in 2022.
Claiming you have money that you do not have does not amount to the art of the deal. It's the art of the steal. And there cannot be different rules for different people in this country or in this state. And former presidents are no different.
That's how she put it then. And then I mentioned getting him to sit down. He recently made waves talking about, maybe he'll testify in these other trials. Well, I think action and history is more relevant than sort of bluster and claims. He didn't do that with Mueller, although he claimed otherwise. And with James, he had a chance to go in and sit down. I want to remind folks, he pled the fifth over 400 times. Legally, that is his right. But civilly, that also didn't help him.
Well, it certainly didn't, because he's got to establish that actually he didn't violate the law. If, as the Attorney General did here, has enough evidence to say, yes, you did. And essentially by doing that, it meant I don't have a defense that I can mount. Potentially without making it appear that I've committed crimes. That's what it means when you assert the fifth, is you're protecting yourself from the appearance. You always do this so well, Ari, is remind folks you're not allowed to infer guilt from asserting it. But nonetheless, that's a pretty dramatic statement. Also, we have to remember that in New York, the New York Attorney General's office has gone after the Trump Foundation and actually revoked its charitable status because it essentially was committing what amounts to a type of fraud with its charities by saying, give us money, we'll do good, nice things for people, and yet finding out that they were writing personal checks for personal benefit. So it's not even the first time the Attorney General of New York has done something that has demonstrated some peril for the Trump Organization, the Trump family. But there's also his university, where he settled that case. He had an opportunity to try to settle this one. He didn't take it.